Okay, so tonight, this week's Parsha is vayishlach, and this coming week is one of the greatest holidays in the history of all holidays, the holiday of
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah is in a few weeks,
Oh.
but it's Rosh Hashanah coming up.
Oh.
Rosh Hashanah for Chassidut. Yutet Kislev, the day the Alter Rebbe was freed. It's a Rosh Hashanah for Chassidut. It's an incredible, incredible day. So let's go through some of the stories. There's a lot of stories in this week's Parsha, and I'm going to go back and forth between them, getting the hidden inner meaning behind them. But let's look at one story in particular. So we're talking in general about Jacob. His sojourning into Haran was last week, and he's coming back into Israel was this week. Right? There's a song, Esav was coming with 400 men, Yaakov daven to Hashem. So, after all this happened, Yaakov came back to Israel with 11 children. But his 12th child was a guy by the name of Binyamin. So the story of his childbirth we actually read in this week's Parsha. Binyamin was actually a triplet. Right? My wife gave birth to triplets, but Binyamin was born with 2 girls. And his mother, Rachel, who was the first love of Yaakov, the one who he initially, when he saw her, right, she was a young girl, he was 84 years old, or 77 years old, and he worked for 7 years for her, and then he got conned, he married Leah instead of Rachel, so this was his first love. And when she gave birth to Binyamin, she died in childbirth. But her final wish on planet Earth, she said, I want to call the child... No. I want to call the child Ben Oni. That's what the Torah says. I want to call the child Ben Oni. And the Torah says, Ve'aviv, his father, Yaakov says, no, I don't want to call him Ben Oni. I'm going to call him Binyamin. And guess who won? By the bris, the mother wasn't around. So he called her Binyamin, of course. But what kind of father, what kind of husband would do that to his wife? He loved Rachel more than anything. More than anything, he loved her. Is this the way to honor your wife who dies? Her final wish was to call the child Ben Oni. Now, we're not used to that name. I don't know anybody called Ben Oni, right? I actually come from a town called Benoni, which is very similar. Benoni. I'm from South Africa. I went to a school in Benoni, Hillel High School. Benoni, it's very similar. But Binyamin is the name. Why? Because Jacob decided, I want to call him Benoni. But how do you argue with your wife at this critical juncture in her life, in your life? What's going on? You guys know the story, right? And there's a tremendous, huge lesson here which we can all learn from. And that is the following. To understand this, let's just go back to a story which happened, which caused the death of Rachel. So Rachel's father was a guy by the name of Lavan. Lavan was a con artist. Lavan had a sister by the name of Rivka. Rivka had 2 sons. One was Esav, one was Yaakov, twins. And Lavan had 2 girls, twins, Rachel and Leah. And Lavan and Rivka signed a contract. There was a verbal agreement between them. The older child will marry the older child. The younger child will marry the younger child. So the older child was Esav. Esav would marry Leah. And the younger child, Jacob, would marry Rachel. But Leah didn't want to do that. She was crying and crying and crying and crying. And so eventually, when the wedding day of Rachel came, Lavan said, I'm giving Leah to you instead. And maybe we'll get into the whole story, but Leah married Rachel. Leah married Yaakov. And the next morning, Yaakov realized he was deceived, so he married Rachel as well. Now, Lavan was the father. He was a con artist. He was a liar, cheater, swindler, really bad guy. And when Jacob left Lavan, after being there for 20 or so years, Rachel stole his idols. In those days, it was like voodoo, magic. You go to a store here on the Upper East Side, and they can read your palm or something, right?
$5 psychic readings.
Psychic readings, right? Anybody been to a psychic reading?
No.
It's complete nonsense, right? You want? I can give you a psychic reading right now, right? Who wants a psychic? You want a psychic reading? You're gonna be good. Everything's gonna be fine. You're gonna have a good life. Let me see your palm.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. That's what it says. That's great. And you give the $5 to charity.
100%.
But Lavan had this trafim, this black magic. So Rachel, his daughter, when she left, she stole them, and she put them under her saddle. Lavan, when he chased after Yaakov, he said to him, Lama ganavta et Elokai, why did you steal my idols? So Jacob said, I never stole them, I wouldn't steal them, and whoever stole them will die. That's what he said. Not even thinking for a moment that his beloved wife stole them. He couldn't believe such a thing is possible even. So Lavan searched and he searched and he searched. And he didn't find them because Rachel said, my stomach's hurting me, and she was sitting on top of the saddle. They were under the saddle. When a tzaddik decrees something, when a tzaddik says something, it happens no matter what. So as a result of his curse, Rachel died when she gave birth to Binyamin. When she gave birth, she died. You take a plate, have time to eat. She died. So with this context in mind, we can now delve deeper into the story, and it's a gewaldige Parshat. It's unbelievable. Listen carefully, because this is a life-changing message. Rachel wanted to name her child Ben-Oni. Why? She looks into the eyes of her husband, her soulmate, the guy who she fell in love with, the guy she loved so much, and she sees so much pain in his eyes. She sees so much pain because she realizes that he blames himself for her death. She realizes that for the rest of his life, he's going to carry the weight and the burden on his shoulders and blame himself for her death. Because he would say, if only I wouldn't have sworn, if only I wouldn't have made that shvuah to Lavan, you'd still be alive. So for the rest of his life, and he was a young man at that age, Yaakov lived till the age of 147 years old, right? He was supposed to live till the age of 180. But when he came towards the end of his life, when he was 130 years old, he came in front of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh asked him, how old are you and how's your life? And he said, I'm 130 years old and my life is terrible and it was horrible and there was so many tzaras, right? Yaakov had a hard life. Esav wanted to kill him. He had tzaras from Lavan. Shimon was captured. Joseph was captured, right? He had a lot of problems in his life. But he uttered 33 years of complaint to Pharaoh. And God took 1 year off his life for every single word that he uttered complaining about his life. So he lived till 147. 180 minus 147 is 33. Because every word that he uttered in complaint, God zipped a year off his life. So don't complain. Don't complain. But Yaakov, at this stage, he was 77 when he came to us. He was about 97 years old. So he lived another 50 years. He lived another 50 years. So Rachel didn't want for the next 50 years of his life, he should blame himself and carry the weight on his shoulders. So she said, I want to call the child Ben-Oni. Ben-Oni means the son of my deception. Don't blame yourself for my death. It's my fault. I'm the one who deceived my father, the son of my deception. I am the one who deceived him. I'm the one who stole the idols, not you. Why do you blame yourself? Blame me. So Jacob says to her, I'm so sorry, my love. The child will be called Binyamin. I cannot call him Ben-Oni. Because Jacob looks at her eyes and he sees a woman in so much pain, blaming herself for her death. Jacob didn't want her going to the grave thinking that she is the cause of her death. At the young age, she was about 30-something years old. So at that young age, you should be the cause of your death. No, that's not going to happen. I'm going to call him Ben Yamin. Ben Yamin means the son of my oath. I am the one who's to blame. I am the one who swore. Don't blame yourself. Don't go to the grave thinking that you are the one causing your death. I am the one who caused your death. You see how a husband and wife argue? You see how Jacob and Rachel teach us how to live, how to argue? We're always blaming each other for everything, right? Something goes wrong. He did it. We're always blaming each other for everything and anything under the sun. But we sometimes have to learn from Yaakov and Rachel. Hold on a second. Blame yourself. Be melamed zchus. Think well about the other guy. This week I was incredibly busy, and there was one day, it was the Wednesday, where I felt so incredibly grateful to Hashem, because Hashem gave us at Belev Echad the zchus, the merit, the privilege to save a life. And here's the story. I've told parts of the story before, but never in full, and I'm going to tell it to you right now. There's a soldier, we'll call him Moisheleh. The unit that he serves in is classified. I cannot name the unit. I know the unit. We'll call the unit whatever you want. So Moisheleh, who's classified, his picture cannot be shared, served in a classified unit. And he's a decorated soldier serving 24 years for Israel. 24 years. Now a regular soldier serves 3 years. This guy is such a hero. He serves 24 years. He's done covert missions that even Fowler couldn't envision such covert missions, right? Fowler is very nice, but even Fowler cannot envision what this guy's done. So I've told the story before. On October 7, he went into Kfar Aza, and he came with a Hammer vehicle, and they had no idea what they're getting themselves into. The intelligence was wrong, and Hamas fired bullets at them. Now I've seen the bullets. The bullets are this big. It's not a bullet, it's like a missile. It's literally like a missile. I've got pictures of it if you want to see it. It's the most craziest kind of bullet. It's massive. So his friend was shot, and this guy, Moisheleh, goes out of his vehicle and he wants to take this guy out. And as he does this, the same sniper who killed his friend shoots Moisheleh. And he shoots him, the bullet goes through, not through his bulletproof vest, but around it here somewhere, and hits him in the back, goes to somewhere in his spine. Now this bullet explodes. It's designed to explode inside of him into dozens of pieces of shrapnel. It's not a bullet, it's like a missile. So Moisheleh feels that his life is over. He lays down on the floor next to his friend, and he recites Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and he passes out. He thinks these are the final moments of his life. Crazy. About 45 minutes later, he wakes up, realizes he's still alive, he's in a lot of pain, and he realizes that he's in a blind spot. This Hamas sniper is there, and the IDF soldiers are there, but nobody can see him. So he picks up his head to signal to his fellow officers that he's alive, and as he does so, a bullet hits him in the skull, grazes him. Thank God it didn't hit him, but it grazes him. And then he picks up his hand to signal to his soul, I'm alive. And as he picks up his hand, his finger was cut off, and he was shot right over here. He's got over 100 pieces of shrapnel in his body from these 4 bullets. And somehow or another he survived. Obviously Hashem wanted him to survive, a miracle. And he was in intensive care and surgery after surgery after surgery. And when he woke up after so many surgeries, he realizes he's in intense pain. I've never seen a soldier in so much pain, and I've dealt with thousands of soldiers in the last 15 years since we founded Belev Echad. I've never seen a soldier in so much pain, excruciating pain. It's like being electrocuted every minute of the day, over and over and over. He could not sit in a chair. He could only lie down. And doctors in Israel were at a loss to figure out what's wrong with him. What's causing him so much pain? Couldn't figure it out. And since the soldier is so decorated, he's got a lot of power behind him. So a lot of these people want him to get better, He's got what's called protectia, but it didn't help. And somehow or another, by divine providence, we got hold of him. We flew him down here to New York for a consultation at NYU, where we have these incredible partnerships with these doctors here. And the doctors examined him and they said, listen, we can't do an MRI because an MRI may move the shrapnel inside of him and kill him. But there's ways to do like this injection to figure out what's causing the pain. We had to fly in business class. He can't. The pilot said he's never allowed somebody to slide down during takeoff and touch down. Never. This is the first exception he knows of his life. That's what the stewardess said. So he came down here, and every moment in a car or is like excruciating pain. He came back here now, this last week. Doctors performed a procedure to figure out the source of the pain, and they were fairly confident they'd figured out it was one piece of shrapnel in a specific part of his body. They said, that's the one. And I think it was Tuesday night we did surgery on him to remove that piece of shrapnel. Very complicated procedure, surgery, and thank God doctors at NYU removed that piece of shrapnel. I have a picture of it if you guys want to see it. It's like a 2-inch piece from that bullet, 2 inches, and they removed it. And this guy is one of the most courageous soldiers. But when you look at him, he is so humble. He's so unassuming. He's so uncomfortable receiving. He is always, his whole life is on the giving end. He's always giving and giving and giving. And you can see it. He's the most humble, nicest person. There's a heart of gold. He's just not used to receiving. So when he receives, he's so uncomfortable. But it was like this moment in life when I realized, wow, this is like if Belev Echad was founded just to save Moshe's life, Dayenu. That's enough. But we literally, causing a person who has unbearable, excruciating pain to be relieved of the pain, it's just something very, very fulfilling. So when you give to others, you are like Yaakov and Rachel. That's what they did, giving to others. And this soldier, what he told me, and this part I've shared before, he said that he was in so much pain in the beginning months of his hospital stay, and he was just miserable. And then one day, somebody told him, why don't you go visit fellow wounded soldiers in your room? No, do Bikur Cholim, what's called, Bikur Cholim, visit the sick. So he went to visit other wounded soldiers, and he listened to them. And when he was able to give to them, it felt so good, and he was finally able to get out of his misery. There was once a student of the Rebbe Rashab, who was a very, very wealthy man. He had a lot of money, a lot of possessions, gave a lot of charity. And one day his business, luck ran out, and he became very, very poor, slowly lost all his money. So he came to the Rebbe Rashab, and he came crying to him, and crying and crying and crying. And he said, I need money to pay this debt, and I need money to pay this debt, and I need money for my ships and for my houses and for all my tzedakah commitments, and I owe this guy and I owe that guy and I owe so many money. And the Rebbe Rashab tells him, for 30 minutes you hear telling me what you need, but I haven't heard what you are needed for. And the guy fainted, because the message was taken to heart. I need, but what about what you are needed for? Life is not just about what can I take. It's about what can I give. The Talmud says a baby is born with its fists clenched, signifying, I'm going to conquer the world, I'm going to become rich and famous, I'm going to be the next Bill Gates, the next Elon Musk, the next Mark Zuckerberg. But when a person passes away, the Gemara says, the Talmud says, he passed away with his palms like this, signifying, I take nothing to the grave but the good deeds that I have accomplished. Now the problem is, when a baby is born with his fists clenched, it's cute. Like, my little triplets, give them a toy to play with, and they're very, very possessive over it. Just tonight, I tried to take the ball of Abigail, my 6-year-old had a ball, and I took it away from her, and she's like screaming. She says, my ball, it's my ball. I said, it's my ball. I have it in my hand, so it's my ball. And she refuses, says, so it's very cute when they're that age that they're very possessive about their items and their toys. But a child grows up looking at life through his or her eyes, meaning the world evolves around me. If my little finger hurts, the world has to stop. But if somebody else is lying in pain, so I'll go visit him, I'll say Mishaberach. But do I care? I don't care. That's how we are wired. We don't care about other people. We live our lives like a beast, like thinking about ich means I. But we don't have the ability to think about other people. We just don't. We are wired like a baby, like a child with its fist clenched. And we live our lives the whole... By the way, you go to these fancy hotels, and what do they have? To attract people, they have mirrors. Mirrors everywhere. Wherever you go, there's mirrors. Because they realize that's what people want to see, mirrors. They want to see themselves. So the fancy hotels, that's what they have, mirrors. Mirrors. It's a great secret. Let a person see himself or herself. They're happy. So when a child is born, it's like you go through school, elementary school and high school, and it's not funny anymore when you're 20, 25, 30 years old and your life evolves around you and you're not able to think about another person. It's not funny, it's sad. So the Rebbe Rashab told this guy, for 30 minutes you're telling me what you need, but what about what you are needed for? So he went back to the yeshiva, he dropped his business, and for 3 months he just learned and absorbed the teachings of Chassidus, which is Yud Tes Kislev, which is Rosh Hashanah coming up next week, which basically one of the fundamental things in Chassidus is bringing God into your life. Realizing that your life is not just about you, it's about God, bringing God into your life. There was once a rabbi and a priest having an argument about God. Where does God exist? How does he exist? In what way does he exist? Who created the world? A whole argument. And the rabbi was a smart man, but the priest was a very, very smart man too. And after 5-6 hours of arguing, back and forth, the rabbi says, listen, to the priest, I got kids at home, I got to feed them supper, but I'll leave you with one sentence, I'm sure you'll agree with me. So the rabbi says to the priest, me as a rabbi, I'm thinking the whole day about myself. You as a priest, the whole day you're thinking about God. So the priest thinks for a second, I'm thinking about God, you're thinking about yourself. It means I'm more spiritual, you're not. That's good line to end the argument, perfect. The rabbi goes home, priest goes home, but the priest spends a sleepless night. He says that rabbi, he didn't just lose the argument. What did he mean when he said, I'm thinking about God all day and he's thinking about himself? So in the morning, at 6 a.m. he runs to the rabbi, he spent a sleepless night, he says, Rabbi, just tell me what you meant. I can't, I need to know what you meant. I know you meant something deep. And the rabbi said to him a profound message, which is a game changer if you really absorb this lesson, because this is what Chassidus and Yud Tes Kislev is all about. He said to him the following. He said, I'm thinking about myself and you're thinking about God. Why? Because what's your starting point in the world? What's your given? Is your given that I exist, or is your given that God exists? What is your absolute truth? He says, you as a priest, you're thinking about God the whole day. Why? Because the fact that you exist, you don't need to think about. Do I exist? I'm right here. Hello. Here I am. I'm alive. I have my money. I have my cars. I have my possessions. Here I am. I need to think about myself. I know I exist. The question is, does God exist in my world? What role does God play in my world? But I am here. God, maybe I'll pray to you. Do you exist? Are you here? Are you there? So I'm thinking about God all day. But the rabbi says, me as a rabbi, when you learn Chassidus, when you learn Torah, you know that God exists. You know the reality is Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is everywhere. That is my reality. The question is, do I exist? Do I exist in this world? What role do I play in God's world? So the rabbi is thinking the whole day about himself. What role do I play? What can I give? What can I provide to God in the world? It's all about perspective. If my given is that God exists, that God is the truth, that God is reality, changes my whole perspective, changes my life. People are miserable because they think the whole day about themselves. If you think the whole day about yourself, you're just going to have problems and problems and problems and more problems. But if you're thinking about God, what problems do you have? Just this week we see how miracles are unfolding in the world at such a rapid, dizzying pace that we don't even have time to have a cup of coffee and smell it until there's another miracle. Syria is a dictator for the last 50 odd years, has been ruling with an iron fist, killing innocent people, threatening Israel. And like that, before he's destroyed, the whole country is gone. Israel took out all his military, all his chemical weapons, all his assets, his helicopters, his navy. I mean, we can't even, the miracles are happening so fast. It's crazy. There's never been a period of history that miracles happen so fast. If you think about it, the whole year, like, there were so many miracles. It's like we don't even know how to count them. See, what is your given? How do you begin your day? Do you begin your day thinking, what am I lacking? What am I missing? Or do you begin your day thinking, what can I provide to God today in this world? What is my mission? By the way, this was Joseph's secret, which we're about to read in the next couple of weeks. Joseph, his mother died in this week's Parshat. Joseph loved her. Joseph was a very sensitive person. There's no character in the Bible that warrants more attention than Joseph. Nobody in the Bible gets more attention than Joseph. Joseph, the Torah describes him how he was so emotional. He cried. The Torah said, he cried and he cried and he cried. He was so sensitive. The poor kid was crying all day. And at the age of 17, he was sold as a slave. He was put into a pit with snakes and scorpions. His brothers were eating lunch around him. His captors tied him up and he escaped. He went to the grave of his mother and he says to her, Imi loma zavtani, mother, why have you abandoned me? He goes to Egypt and he's a prisoner, he's a slave for a year, and he's accused of violating his master's wife. He never did it. And he's thrown into a dungeon for 12 years, solitary confinement pretty much, into a dungeon for a crime he didn't commit. His father thought he was dead. His mother was dead. His brothers hated him. After 22 years, he's finally the viceroy of Egypt and his brothers are at his mercy. And he finally reveals himself to his brothers. And his brothers think that he's going to take revenge. Any normal, sane person would take revenge. And then Joseph reveals one word that changes his life, and he's able to articulate to us how to live a meaningful life. He says one word. He says to the brothers, you didn't sell me as a slave. I was sent by God. Every morning Joseph woke up and he said, was I sold or was I sent? Sold means I'm a victim. Sold means I'm not in control. Sold means that I wake up in the morning feeling miserable because somebody sold me, because somebody did something to me, because the given is that I exist and now my existence is in jeopardy because I was sold. Sent means my given is God. My given is Hashem exists. What role do I play in God's existence? Sent means I'm an emissary of God. Every moment, every breath I take, I was sent by God for a mission. So how can I be miserable? Who cares what happens, when it happens, how it happens? It's all from Hashem. That's what it means, sent. There doesn't exist a Jew or anybody that doesn't have major tsaras, major problems. We all have problems. But you have a choice if to tell yourself you were sold or to tell yourself you were sent. It's your choice. No matter what life throws at you, God will always give you a problem that you can contain. But how do I live my life? Am I a giver or am I a receiver? The soldier Moshe, until he gave others, he was miserable. The secret to happiness is not another $1 million. Another million and another million and another million, that's not going to make you happier. The secret to happiness is to give. The more you give to others, the more you feel fulfilled. This week was one of the happiest weeks for me, the happiest days, when I was able to see clearly how we saved a life. And this is all the argument that Yaakov has with his beloved wife Rachel. Rachel, instead of blaming him for her death, she looks into his eyes and she sees the pain in his eyes. Right? So often when you look into somebody's eyes, you need to look beyond what you see. Look deep into their soul. She was able to see his pain that he blamed himself. And he was able to see the same thing in her. Because they were soulmates. Because they loved each other. Because they were in tune with each other. Because they saw, they felt what each other need. When Yaakov married Leah, right? It says, Vayhiva boker. It was in the morning, Vehina hi Leah, she was Leah, right? So the commentaries say like this. They say every single boy that dates a girl, did I say this last week? There's something you will discover about your spouse only after the wedding. What do you do when you discover it? You stay with them. Okay, so that's the first part of the shir. The next part, which I want to talk about, is the first hostage. First female hostage to ever be captured was in this week's Parshat. Who was it? Dinah. So the Torah describes it. Dinah was going out and Shechem sees her, he captures her, he violates her, and then he wants to marry her. So he comes to her brothers, and the brothers Shimon and Levi speak on behalf of the family, and they say, yes, we'll marry you, no problem, but we need you all to have a bris. Once you all have a bris, we can marry you. It could be one happy family. So Shechem and his entourage go to the whole city, and they say, we can marry them all as long as we have a bris. So they convince them all to make a bris, and on the third day, Shimon and Levi, who are how old? 13 years old. They grab their sword, and they kill every single person in Shechem. Why did they kill every person? Why didn't they just kill Shechem and take their sister Dinah back? Why did they kill every single person there? Because if you are harboring a terrorist, a kidnapper in your village, and you don't do anything, you be killed. You are deserving of the death penalty. That is how we free hostages. That is how we bring our hostages home. And you can deduce for yourselves what I'm saying. But Dinah was violated. She became pregnant. She gave birth to a child. What was that child's name? Anybody know? That child, when the child was born, her grandfather Yaakov put an amulet on her, and he wrote the words Kshera, meaning kosher. That everybody should know this girl is kosher. The brothers, the family were very embarrassed of her, so they sent her to live somewhere else. And she eventually came to the country of... Nobody knows? No? The country of Mitzrayim, of Egypt. And she was adopted by a man by the name of Potiphera and his wife Zlachia. Now look how God runs the world. Dinah was violated. Who else was sent to Egypt later on? Joseph. Joseph was sent as a slave to Egypt. And he was bought by Potipharah and Zlachia. Now Zlachia used to look at the stars, and she used to see that she and Joseph would share common descendants. She saw that in the stars. That's why when you look in the stars, it's real, what you see, but it's not real all the way. Like she couldn't see that Joseph would eventually marry her daughter, not her real daughter, her biological daughter, her adopted daughter, Osnat. But do you see how God is preparing the whole world? He's preparing a shidduch for Joseph. Who could Joseph possibly marry in Egypt? The guys in Egypt, there are no Jews in Egypt. He's a single, solitary, lost, abandoned slave in Egypt. Who was he supposed to marry? He married his niece. Joseph, his sister was Dinah. His half-sister was Dinah. Dinah's daughter was Osnat. He married his niece. He had a wife. He had Manasseh and Ephraim with her. You see how God runs the world? It's called Hashgacha Pratit, divine providence. It's one of the foundations of Yutes Kislev, of Chassidut, that there's something called divine providence in the world. That means if a leaf falls on the ground in a specific way, it's by divine providence. Everything that happens in our lives, every moment, every encounter is all by divine providence. The fact that we're all sitting here tonight is divine providence. Right, there was a leak in my basement this week. There's some sewer pipe erupted, and the whole house smells of sewage. So we couldn't have the Torah class there tonight. That is divine providence. What is Hashem doing? I have no idea, but that is divine providence. There's nothing that happens in this world without it being divinely ordained by God. Every encounter, every person you meet is all divine providence. So Dinah, her daughter Osnat, Rashi says an interesting commentary. He says that Dinah used to go out like her mother went out. And Rashi seems to imply that a woman is not supposed to go out. Where's a woman supposed to be? Seems to imply a woman's supposed to be indoors, cleaning the kitchen, doing the laundry, right? Seems to imply that the woman shouldn't go out. So is that the case? Woman should be indoors? Rashi seems to imply that if she would have been indoors, she wouldn't have been violated. She's only because she was outdoors. Woman, they should be indoors. But if you look at every Chabad website in the world, including our own, ChabadIC.com, you'll see that the Rabbi and the Rebbetzin are co-directors. The Rebbe was very adamant that women play a role. Right? Avraham would be Makar of the men, Sarah would be Makar of the woman. A man has his powers to accomplish and to change the world, but a woman has her powers. So every Chabad house in the world is actually run by a Chabad rabbi and a Chabad rebbetzin. The Chabad rabbi happens to be one to read from the Torah on Shabbat morning, and actually my wife's very happy that I have to wake up early and go there and she can come a little later to shul. But we share duties equally. It's just I read from the Torah, I count as a minion, she doesn't, so she has a little different duties, but she's equally involved. So what does Rashi mean when he says that Leah used to go out? And there's an incredible explanation here. You see, Esav was a terrible man. He's a wicked man. Esav, until the age of 15 years old, kept his rishus, his wickedness, hidden. Abraham, his grandfather, lived till the age of 175, and not till the age of 180. He passed away 5 years early, so that he wouldn't see his grandchild Esau become a Rasha. But Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob shared 15 years on planet Earth. So Abraham wasn't able to transform Esau, to make him into a tzaddik. Yitzchak, his father, who bore him, who raised him, wasn't able to make Esau into a tzaddik. Yaakov, the forefather Yaakov, his twin brother, wasn't able to transform him. And by the way, Esau His potential to do good, as I explained last time, was enormous, even greater than any other tzaddik. At the end of his life, right, Jacob was buried in Marat HaMachpelah, and Esav stopped the burial. He said, you cannot bury him, right? I said that last week, right? Right? The story of his head being chopped off, yes? Did I say it or did I say it?
Maybe not. I don't think so.
Yaakov was died in Mitzrayim in Egypt, and he asked his children to carry his body all the way to Marat HaMachpelah, where he's buried today. And when he arrived at Marat HaMachpelah, Esav, his twin brother, stopped the entourage. He said, you can't bury him here. They said, why not? He says, this is my grave. Well, how come? There's 8 spots here. Adam and Eve are buried here, that's 2. Abraham and Sarah are buried here, that's 4. Yitzchak and Rivka, that's 6. There's only 2 spots left. One for me, one for Yaakov. Yaakov took his spot, gave it to his wife Leah, so there's 1 spot left, that's mine. So the brother said to him, but you sold it to him? He says, show me the contract. They said, we left the contract in Egypt. He says, well, till you get me the contract, I'm not allowing the burial to take place. So they sent Naphtali, one of the brothers who's very, very fast. He runs like, it says, before he stepped on one blade of grass, he was already on the next one. He was they sent him running to Egypt. So there was a grandchild of Jacob by the name of Chushim. He was deaf. He couldn't hear anything. So he didn't understand the conversation. But one thing he realized, was that his great uncle Esav, the Rasha, was preventing the burial. So he didn't think twice, took out his sword and chopped off his head. And Esav's head went and rolled into the grave of Yaakov, and they buried Yaakov today in Marat HaMachpelah with Esav's head. The problem is you're not allowed to bury a Rasha, an evil man, with a tzaddik. So how could they bury Esav with Yaakov? And the answer is Esav's head signifies his potential. His potential was like a tzaddik, was enormous. His potential to do good was beyond. If he would have transformed his life, he would have been the greatest tzaddik. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were not able to transform his life. You know who would have been able to transform his life? Who was he supposed to marry, I mentioned before? Leah had the power. Leah had the potential to change Esav, to make him into a tzaddik. It wasn't for naught that Esav was ordained, was destined to marry Leah. Hashem orchestrated that Leah and Esav should be soulmates because she had the power, the capacity, the potential to transform him. But she didn't want to accept her assignment. She prayed and she prayed and she cried and she cried and she cried. And it says her eyes were soft from crying. And she did tshuva until God accepted her prayers and said, okay, you marry Yaakov as well. She didn't want to accept her assignment. But who was given her assignment? Her daughter, Dinah. Dinah was given the assignment. The little girl Dinah could have accomplished what Abraham couldn't, what Yaakov couldn't, what Yitzchak couldn't. This little girl, Dinah, could have done it. Because a woman has a power, has a nuclear power at her capacity. She could have transformed this guy and he would have been one of the greatest tzaddikim in the world. The problem is, why wasn't she given Esav to marry? Why? Remember the story? Because when Esav was coming with 400 men, Yaakov davened to Hashem, Yaakov hid her in a box. Because he didn't want Esav setting his eyes on Dinah. So he hid her in a box. So what does it mean she used to go out? A woman is supposed to go out. A woman is supposed to go out and use her potential to transform the world, to change the world. There's a certain power that a woman has that Abraham didn't have, that Isaac didn't have, that Jacob didn't have. Dinah and Leah had it. It's a potential, it's a capacity, it's a power. A woman should utilize her strength. Saying that men and women have equal rights is being wrong to men and being wrong to women. Women have superior rights and men have superior rights. Every one of them is a different person. So we shouldn't make us equal. That's wrong. We should each utilize our strengths to do what's right. Dinah could have accomplished that. So Yaakov was punished that his daughter was violated by Shechem because he didn't want to give her to Esav. That's why Yaakov was punished. But that's the depth of the pshat, of the meaning in Rashi, that Dinah used to go out. Like a mother, like daughter, they both had the power to go out and bring people closer to God. But you see how it all comes full story? Dinah was violated. She had a daughter, Osnat, who went and God sent her there by divine providence to become the spouse of Joseph and to raise her children, Menashe and Ephraim, in Egypt. That's why it says, Yisimcha Elokim, may God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. Ephraim and Menashe, who were raised, born and bred in Egypt. All the way, they lived their whole lives in Egypt. They were the first Jewish people to be born and to die in exile. Right? The Shvatim themselves, Jacob's children, were born in Haran, but they didn't live their whole lives there. They lived their whole lives in Israel. These guys, Menashe and Ephraim, were the first people to be born, bred, live, and die in Egypt. And they were good people. They were good Jews. So that's how the Parsha is all connected. The whole story is connected. So a lot of messages here tonight. Live your life by divine providence. Live your life as if God is the giver in the world, and you will live a happy, successful, fruitful, and beautiful life. Chaim Livracha. Whoever has any questions, I'm here to answer.